I would say to young creatives that we need you because young artists constantly remove the rug from the generation before us, and there's something gleeful about that. So I look forward to being usurped, you know? I look forward to having people run circles around me, because how joyous it is to actually have the opportunity to be humbled.
One thing that I'd like to communicate to emerging creatives, anyone, most people really, is that languages of resistance can only develop socially. It's through a nuanced understanding and empathetic understanding of each other that we can create a group consensus of language of how to uphold each other and how to help each other survive. Before languages of resistance can develop socially, they have to happen internally. And I think one thing that I really want to impart to a lot of creatives is just to be like interested and active in the world. Like art doesn't have to, like if you're a photographer, you don't only have to read about photography, etc. I think it's really important to participate in the world outside of your art practice in multiple different ways. And it also means that that participation doesn't need to translate into your artwork. Like if you I don't know, want to make work about uncomplicated women's lib or something like that, you don't have to represent that in a photo to make a structural intervention in the world about it. And I would almost argue that like through participating in the world, reading about things that maybe don't affect you, finding ways to participate together, all of these things really deepen our ability to form internal incentivization processes to care about people that we can't meet and we can't know.
As someone who's 41 years old, who has, worked in the communication/storytelling industries for, roughly 2 decades, I have seen immense shifts, mostly because of technology, because of the implements that we have to take images. I am recording this video on my phone, a device that I fit in my pocket that can record a video in high definition and take thousands upon thousands of pictures just in its little rectangle. In that sense, although everything is much more accessible and much easier to do, I think that mindset of being respectful needs to still be at that heart of image creation. I would advise emerging creatives just to take that time. And I think the influence we have in this hyper online and rapidly changing world is that things need to be more instant. Things need to happen at a much quicker pace. But I would advise emerging creatives just to take the time for themselves to experience the real world without looking through a lens, without thinking about how it's going to be reflected through a device or through digital media. Just to make sure you take that time away from a screen to experience this world as our ancestors have for hundreds of thousands of years, right? So just to take the time away from the technology, take the time away from the lens, and just be yourself and be amongst your relations and be amongst your community and be yourself on your lanes, on your particular setting.
What I want emerging creatives to know is just to really know that there are different ways of doing things that can be just as valid as what we've been taught is the only way. I really hope that emerging creatives take the time to learn about structures of power, to learn about settler colonialism and your role in it, your complicity in it, the ways you're affected by it, all these different complications. Like I really hope this next generation of creatives is doing that work. And then looking at how this concept of a career or this concept of a field, all this kind of stuff feeds into those power structures and is supported by those power structures to maintain the world that we know today. This world is not working for many of us. So what I want emerging creatives to know is that it's okay to disrupt that. It's okay to refuse to participate. It's okay to create new ways of participating or new worlds completely. Many people I know are doing that, and sometimes it's scary and sometimes it takes sacrifice, and you might not have a career like how you think about it or how you're fed to think about it, but you can get validation from other things. For myself, taking hits to my career has just meant my life is so much more meaningful in other ways, in the work that I get to do, in the worlds that I get to build with different people all the time. And there's nothing better than that. So now is the time to dream up new worlds, to disrupt the old ones, to maybe, I don't know, maybe burn them to the ground, all these structures, all these institutions, and create new pathways forward, and to not be, to really take that leap. Don't be scared of taking hits to your career, because the goal is to make it so that we don't have to worry about these weird pressures of a career or success or hierarchy in the future anyways, or that's what I hope. So yeah, that's what I wish for emerging creatives to really know.
Visual representation and art can be a powerful pathway to understanding people's worlds. Our worlds at this point in time contain oppression, contain a large amount of structural and systemic violence. Addressing that and representing it can be a really powerful pathway to justice. And I think that it's really important that people who are in creative fields are thinking about justice and are thinking about how not only to represent marginalized people, but how to bring about a world where those forms of oppression don't exist. I think that we have to work together to get there, but we can't separate the aesthetic portrayal of people from our political projects, from our movements for liberation. And we can't be separated from representations of us. And so I think that that calls for a number of things. It calls for better representation of marginalized groups, especially Black and Indigenous people in creative fields. But it also means that everyone carries a part of the responsibility of creating better relations with Indigenous people and with documenting oppression and continuing to also document and look into people who are building alternatives, who are building other spaces where we can be practicing liberatory, transformational forms of relating. And I think that the creative arts and forms of visual representation have a lot to offer. Movements for alternative justice, movements for abolition, movements for Indigenous sovereignty. I think that there's some really promising possibilities around how we work together to get there.
It really is your voice that is your power. And I know that sounds like super cheesy, but as long as you are creating work that is of your own voice, then that's how you will be differentiated, and that is how you will continue to grow as an artist. Find community, surround yourself with people who will support you, continue to do personal work. If you are working for clients, just know that you always have to do personal work to maintain your sanity and your happiness, because doing work strictly for clients is really soul-sucking. Yeah, I think that it's a long game, that making work and being an artist is about the amount of time that you put into it and how you nurture your own work. Don't look for validation outside of yourself. Just continually strive to validate your own work because it's important.
In terms of things that I might want to communicate to creatives working in this moment, I would say that to move through the world as responsible artists and cultural producers, to decenter the so-called mainstream. It doesn't have to be your mainstream. It can be tangential, if even that. Having the young aspects of your practice, I think that keeps you hungry in a good way. And then not shying away from critical voices, but finding the right critical voices. The critical voices that don't need the footnotes, the context, the added references, the proof or the evidence to believe your experience is your experience before they're even able to engage your work, so that you can get the value of critique, which is incredible for all artists and cultural producers. And then really remembering our role as artists, as Tony K. Bambara tells us, is the job of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible, or as James Baldwin eloquently and viscerally puts it, the job of the artist is to tell the truth or vomit up the anguish. All artists eventually have to tell the truth. So really to document the truths of our realities and challenge the constructed singular narratives that allow us to maintain a semblance of innocence or independence or any of the fallacies of white supremacy, to disrupt systems and the notion of inevitability and scarcity, to capture and take back our imagination and resist the ways in which it is being limited and captured by systems that are not invested in our freedom, to really fundamentally facilitate the healing of our communities. That's the advice that I would give artists and cultural producers. Locate yourself responsibly, find your people, find the places that pour into you, create, recreate, and remember, it's not always about the hustle. You have to be in the world in order to make art about being in the world. That's another advice for artists. No is a complete sentence. It's advice that I'm working on. And have criteria for saying yes. It's always really good. Does it bring you joy? Is it going to help you survive? Is it going to give you artistic growth? And I like to hit 2 out of 3 before I say yes to something. So that's everything. So thanks for listening to me and for the opportunity to make this video for you. Hopefully it resonates and it offers you some semblance of connection or wisdom or insight. Good luck with everything. Congrats on choosing to be artists. It's messy out here, but we need you.